There are moments when the world seems to turn upside down. You pray, you strive, you try to do everything right, and yet the doors close, plans crumble, and your heart tightens with unanswered questions. In these times, it's hard to see a purpose. It's as if we're trapped in a maze, groping in the dark, unsure if any path will truly lead us to an exit. It's in this kind of scenario that Romans 8 verse 28 shines as a living promise. We know that in all things God works for the good of those who love Him. But how can all things work for good when the pain seems so unjust? This verse does not deny suffering or ignore loss. It points to something greater. It invites us to trust not in what we see now, but in what God is building behind the scenes. The truth is, when life doesn't make sense, it may be because God is writing a story we haven't yet come to understand. And in that story, every tear, every fall, and every silence plays a crucial role in the good He is preparing. When we hear that all things work together for good, it's natural to imagine that this good will come in the form of healing, victory, open doors, or fulfilled dreams. But the good that God promises in Romans 8 verse 28 goes far beyond momentary relief. It is deep, eternal, and often perplexing. Sometimes, God's good comes disguised as delays. Other times, it presents itself through losses that teach us to depend more on Him. You may have gone through something you would never choose, but it taught you to pray like never before, to love with more compassion, or to see life through different eyes. God's good is the kind of good that transforms character, aligns the heart with heaven, and draws you closer to Him more than any earthly achievement could. That's why trusting in this verse is an act of faith. Faith that the Creator knows exactly what He's doing, even when human logic fails. Trusting that all things work for good requires something rare in today's world. Faith that does not depend on explanations. We live in an age where everything must make immediate sense, where answers should be quick and solutions visible. However, the promise of Romans 8 verse 28 invites us to a type of trust that challenges reason. There are times when life seems incoherent. Good things happen to bad people, while righteous individuals face deep losses. In this apparent mess, God is still writing a larger story, and it's essential to trust Him even when we don't understand the plot. This trust is like that of a passenger who remains calm even without seeing the map, simply because they know who is at the wheel. It's a rest that doesn't come from logic, but from the certainty that the author of life is in control, and He never wastes pain, time, or tears. There's a type of pain that silently hurts. It doesn't shout but eats away inside. They are disappointments, losses, and forced fresh starts that, at the moment, seem to have no reason for existing. But Romans 8 verse 28 reminds us of something extraordinary. Even what hurts has a purpose. God does not waste suffering. He transforms wounds into sources of empathy, failures into valuable lessons, and waiting into maturity. What seems unjust or useless today may later reveal itself as the key to a new chapter. When we look back, many of our greatest challenges become the most powerful chapters of our story. Sometimes, the purpose is hidden but never absent. And it is precisely there, in the pain that seems senseless, that God begins to align everything for our good. How many times have we asked, "Where is God in all this?" Especially when life seems completely out of our control, and everything gets scrambled, as if someone had erased our script. But it is in this scenario that Romans 8 verse 28 shines even brighter. Even when everything seems to go wrong, God is writing it right, even if, to our human eyes, the lines look crooked. He sees the big picture, while we only see a snippet. The twists, unexpected turns, and even divine silences are part of a greater work. Over time, we realize that that closed door saved us from disaster, that no was, in fact, a gift. That's when we understand God specializes in turning chaos into purpose and pain into direction. Trust. The lines may seem crooked, but the hand that writes is perfect. Not everything that brings us closer to God comes wrapped in joy. Sometimes, the good promised in Romans 8 verse 28 arrives through pain, loss, or frustration. This doesn't mean that God has ceased to be good, only that his concept of good surpasses our immediate understanding. Remember Joseph, sold by his brothers, unjustly imprisoned, forgotten? At first glance, nothing in his story seemed good. But in the end, God turned it all into salvation for many. The same can happen to us. That difficult moment may be fostering growth. That rejection may be making way for a greater purpose. God's good is not shallow, it is profound, shaping our character, strengthening our faith, and pushing us to the center of his will. So when something bad happens, don't rush to despair. Wait. Observe. God is at work, and the end will be better than the beginning. There are days when everything seems confusing. Prayers aren't answered as we hoped. Doors close. Plans fall apart. And the silent question echoes in our minds, why God? It's at this exact point that Romans 8 verse 28 invites us to trust, not to explain. God never promised we would understand every step, but he guaranteed that he would be with us in all of them. When you can't see his hand, trust his heart. Remember, faith isn't having all the answers, it's resting even without them. Imagine a tapestry maker working on the reverse side of a piece. From where we stand, everything looks chaotic, loose threads, disordered colors. But when he turns the embroidery, we see the beauty of what has been created all along. The same is true with our lives. It may seem messy now, but God is weaving something glorious. In a world where everything changes at an alarming pace, feelings, circumstances, people, it is reassuring to know that the promise of Romans 8 verse 28 remains steadfast as a rock. All things work together for good for those who love God. This truth has no expiration date. It doesn't depend on the day's mood, the economy, or the seasons of life. Hope, in this context, is not an optimistic illusion. It's an anchor, something that holds firm beyond the visible, rooted in the faithfulness of an unchanging God. He is already in the future, aligning everything for your good, even while you're still trying to understand the present. There's a type of hope that doesn't wear out over time, because it isn't based on circumstances, but on character, the infallible character of God. When everything around you is moving, hold on to this certainty. God is still in control, and he continues to act for your good. There are moments when pain seems purposeless. It burns, corrodes, destabilizes. And in the midst of suffering, it's common to ask, how can this work for good? The answer, while it doesn't provide immediate relief, comes loaded with wisdom. Not everything that is good in the end seems good at the beginning. Romans 8 verse 28 reveals to us that God is an expert in redemption. He takes the shards of what has been broken and, instead of hiding them, transforms them into stained glass that tells stories of overcoming and faith. Pain, when surrendered to him, is not in vain. It becomes the raw material for growth, maturity, and even comfort to others. It is in pain that we discover strengths we didn't know we had, and it is there that God whispers most intensely. So if your heart is aching today, know this: even if you don't understand now, God is silently working to turn that pain into purpose. Trust in him, even with tears in your eyes. We live in an era where everything is immediate: messages, deliveries, results. But God's timing doesn't follow the rhythm of our clock. When Romans 8 verse 28 states that all things work together for good, we need to remember that this good may not emerge at the moment we expect, but rather at the precise time it will be most transformative. God's delays are not neglect, they are care. He sees the whole while we only see parts. Perhaps what you desire so much hasn't yet materialized because the scene is not ready, or because your heart still needs to be shaped to receive the blessing that is to come with maturity. In the meantime, trust. God does not fail in His timing. He acts in the fullness of time. And when He moves, everything aligns with divine precision. The wait, as difficult as it may be, also cooperates for your good. There are pains that seem inexplicable, and it's natural to ask, why me? But Romans 8 verse 28 invites us to look beyond the immediate. What hurts today may, over time, become a source of comfort and wisdom for others who are going through the same pain. God transforms wounds into testimonies. What you once faced in silence, with tears and uncertainty, could be exactly what brings hope to someone in the future. He does not waste suffering. Everything is redefined in the hands of the Creator. That's why, even without understanding, we can rest assured, everything works together for good, even losses, delays, and disappointments. Your journey could be the bridge to someone else's healing. And in that, there is purpose. When the pain is intense, it often robs us of our vision. Suffering causes us to focus solely on the present moment, making us believe that we will never escape this phase. But Romans 8 verse 28 reminds us that there is a greater plan in motion, and this plan does not end with your pain but with the purpose that God is crafting through it. Joseph was sold by his brothers, falsely accused, and forgotten in prison. For years, everything seemed to be against him. But when God revealed His plan, it became clear, every painful phase contributed to a greater purpose. He not only survived, he was positioned to save multitudes. If you are suffering today, remember, your story does not end here. God does not allow pain without purpose. What you are going through now may be shaping you for something far greater. Don't just look at the pain, look at what God can do through it. There are moments when everything feels stagnant. We pray, we wait, we seek, but nothing seems to change. It feels as if the heavens are silent. In those moments, it's common to think that God has forgotten us. But Romans 8 verse 28 offers us powerful comfort. Even when we don't see it, God is working behind the scenes. Just as the roots of a tree grow deep before the fruit appears, many of God's works are silent and subterranean. He is connecting people, aligning circumstances, and strengthening you from within. God's silence does not mean absence. It means something is being built. Trust that there is an invisible movement happening. While you stand firm in faith, God is preparing the ground so that, at the right time, the promised good will flourish. Don't be deceived by what your eyes can see. The invisible is the stage for the supernatural. Not always does the path we choose align with the one God has set for us. Often, He leads us through winding shortcuts, detours that seem like obstacles but actually hide a greater plan. Romans 8 verse 28 reminds us that all things work together for good, including the most improbable paths. Think of Joseph in Egypt, sold by his brothers, unjustly imprisoned, forgotten for years. Humanly speaking, everything seemed wrong. But in the end, he was elevated to the government of Egypt to save many lives. The journey didn't make sense at the time, but God was writing a greater purpose with every detail. When plans go awry, remember, God's ways are not our ways, but they are perfect. Each unexpected turn might be bringing you closer to the destination you truly need. We arrive at the conclusion of this journey, and perhaps the great lesson of Romans 8 verse 28 is precisely this. Even when nothing makes sense, God remains sovereign. He has not lost control of your story. Not for a second. Not when you wept alone in the silence of your room. Not when doors closed one after another. Not when your heart wanted to give up. The promise that all things work together for good is not just a pretty phrase for good moments. It is a firm reminder for difficult days, for nights of uncertainty, for the deserts of the soul. It is in this trust that you can rest. Everything, absolutely everything, will be used by God to build something greater, more beautiful, and stronger within you. So take a deep breath. Rise once more. This is not the end. It is just another piece being fitted into the grand design of heaven.